you remember the Calgary columnist who caused quite a stir with her column on Vancouver Insite and Corey Monteith a few weeks ago? Well, she's been back in Vancouver. She, in fact, toured Insite. We're going to talk to her after the news next.
Oh.
Licia Corbella is a columnist with the Calgary Herald, and you may recognize the name because she took quite a bit of heat, both in social media and here on CKNW, after writing a column about Insite and the availability of heroin in Vancouver. In the piece, she linked Corey Monteith's death to Vancouver and mused that he possibly wouldn't have got access to heroin if he was in any other Canadian city. She also spent some time in the downtown east side last week and did a tour of Insite, a facility that she was very critical of in her original column. So I welcome her to the program this morning. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
First of all, were you surprised at the reaction you got from your original column?
Yeah, actually, certainly by the volume of the interest to the column and by the vitriol to the column, for sure. Yeah, it was surprising. I mean, I don't think, if you disagree with someone, I don't think you should threaten them with death or hope they get raped or hope they kill themselves. I mean, I kind of think that goes beyond the pale.
You actually got that kind of reaction?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's very troubling. I did a story earlier this morning about the family in Ontario who received an incredibly offensive letter about their 13-year-old autistic son. So that's another issue. But I'm interested to hear that you got similar kinds of vitriol over what was a controversial column. Now, you had real serious doubts about the downtown east side and Insite as a facility for harm reduction. I'm told you actually took a tour of Insite recently. Did anything surprise you? Did it change your mind in any way about your thoughts on Insite?
Well, I still have many troubling. I'm still troubled with some aspects of what's going on in the downtown east side. I want to say, up front that the people I met from Insite were tremendous people. I really, really admire them. They completely believe in what they're doing, and I was very impressed with the work that they are doing and the care and the compassion that they show these people who are addicted to drugs. So I was very impressed by them all and really, really liked them. I had wonderful conversations with, addicts and people who are trying to recover. And so I was impressed with them all and enjoyed meeting them all. My concern, though, is that, that's one pillar, like harm reduction's one pillar, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of emphasis being placed on helping people sort of see beyond themselves as an addict and seeing themselves more as a full human being and somebody who has dreams beyond being an addict. Like, shouldn't the role be, and so what's your dream? What do you want to do later? Like, what do you, or not forcing them to quit their drug addiction, but sort of planting the seeds more often into doing that.
But isn't part of what Insite's success has been is that it's kept many people alive. It's almost completely stopped the drug overdose deaths that we were seeing in the hundreds a decade ago?
Actually, no. Actually, drug overdose deaths in the downtown east side have gone up. So that's actually incorrect. And the other thing is people keep on talking about heroin addiction like it's something that you can't ever quit. Do you know what happens when you cold turkey quit heroin? You feel like you have a bad case of the flu. You vomit, you have diarrhea, you get the shakes and cold sweats. And nothing worse happens to you. Nobody's ever died from quitting heroin. Like, I'm not sure people are aware of that.
No, but they've died from overdosing on heroin.
Sure they have, but that there can be more of a push towards getting people off of using heroin. Like there was one of the things that I pointed out in that column that got everybody so upset was I talked about how the downtown east side acts very much as a honeypot or a magnet for people who want to try heroin for the first time. And, people trot out these studies and say, very few people come down there for a first-time hit. Well, and people didn't believe these emails that I had received from people saying that's exactly what happened to my son, or that's what happened to me and my girlfriend.
But wait a minute. Did they go to the downtown east side, or are you suggesting they went to Insite for their first hit?
They went to Insite for their first hit. And so Insite says that's very rare, that their average user has been using heroin for 16 years. There's a tragedy in that number, isn't there? 16 years is the average length of time somebody's been injecting drugs who uses Insite. I mean, think about that. 16 years. They're not getting high anymore, Bill. They're not even getting anything out of it, except they're just not going to
What would you do? What would you suggest instead of Insite?
Well, I'm not suggesting anything instead of Insite. I think you need to sort of reduce the amount of drugs that are available so that people start weaning themselves from this, and that there's more of an emphasis to get people to stop using drugs. So, for instance, people don't believe my anecdotes, okay? But maybe they'll believe their own eyes. And if they go on to YouTube and look up the documentary Streets of Plenty, go to segment number 5, and there's the young documentary person uses a hidden camera. Have you seen that?
Not that specific one, but I've seen lots of stuff, and I've spent lots of time down there.
That guy goes into Insite with a hidden camera, and not one person tries to dissuade him from using drugs. In fact, so instead of saying, wait a minute, before you inject these drugs, first of all, he didn't know how to inject drugs, so they helped him. But the other thing is they didn't bring over a counselor or anything and try to say to him, look, this isn't a great option for you. Why don't you just rethink this, and we'll talk to you about it. They try to talk him out of it. No. Instead, the nurse, she's very nice. I mean, she was very helpful. But she basically, the only thing she said was, why drugs? And he says, I'm curious. And she goes, it's okay. You don't have to say anything. It's no big deal. You see, it's no big deal down there, Bill. It's so normalized. Shooting drugs into your veins is so normalized that people working at Insite think it's no big deal for somebody to use it for the first time. And so when, at the end, after she's put the elastic on his arm and helped him find a good vein, he had good veins.
You're telling me this is a first-time user and the nurse was aware?
This is a first-time user. She knows it is. She knows he doesn't know how to do it. And then she says to him at the end, how was that for you? How was that for you?
You saw this.
Anyone can see it. You can see it. Go online. It's called Streets of Plenty. It was a documentary. It won some awards.
You talked to Donovan, right?
I talked to Donovan.
The young man we did a documentary on.
Yeah.
That Jessica did a documentary on. He was in studio with us here. He told me Insite saved his life.
Well, Insite prevented him from getting a disease, but what saved his life is he OD'd in his room, and somebody sent him to hospital, and he was in hospital. He was in a coma for 21 days, and he cleaned out. That's what saved his life. He stopped using drugs because he OD'd. He was in a coma for 21 days, and when he woke up, he was no longer addicted.
Well, I'm told that Insite put him in touch with the right recovery house from Insite. It was his connections at Insite that helped him get clean.
Yeah, but the initial thing that got him clean was Donovan was in a coma for 21 days. So he woke up in hospital after having half his colon, half his bowel, and a whole bunch of other stuff inside his body cut out of him because it had died.
But he used after that.
No, my understanding is he did not.
No, he did.
Oh, well, anyway, that was the beginning of getting clean, was his near-death experience.
Talking with Licia Corbella, columnist for the Calgary Herald. More with Ms. Corbella, and I include your call, 604-280-9898. You're with Bill Good on CKNW News Talk 980. Talking with Calgary Herald columnist Licia Corbella. She was recently back in Vancouver. She did tour the downtown east side. She did go to Insite. She'd written a very controversial column following the death of actor Corey Monteith. And Licia, I must tell you that one of the things that I found most outrageous about your initial column was the suggestion that Corey Monteith's death may have been avoided or might not have happened had he not been in Vancouver. And I thought it was incredibly naive to think that a wealthy young man who is already addicted to heroin would have trouble getting heroin in any city in Canada.
Well, I think it's a lot easier to know where to go to get it in Vancouver. If you lose your contacts so in Toronto he might not have, say, a contact. I know he grew up in Vancouver, so sure he has contacts, but the fact of the matter is if you lose contact with your dealer, you know where to go to get it in Vancouver, whereas that's not necessarily as clear cut in places like Toronto or any other city in Canada.
Well, I doubt that very much, especially if you're a young person of means. I don't think that a Corey Monteith or a wealthy lawyer or anybody else of means would have trouble scoring heroin in any big city in Canada, probably not in a small one either. However,
well, anyway, I beg to differ. I think that it's a lot tougher to find heroin in any other city in Canada than it is in Vancouver. You know exactly where to go in Vancouver. You want some heroin, you go to the downtown east side.
Probably not. Probably not if you're a high-profile actor. Come on.
The last photo of Corey Monteith, it's interesting that you brought up Donovan, okay? So Donovan, who's the person that told you that I went on this tour of Insight, this recovering drug addict, he, when we were doing it, he was interviewing me and I was interviewing him at the radio station cafe right beside Insight. And finally he said to me, we have to move. And I said, well, why? And he said, because I find it too tempting to be here. So we moved into Gastown. And I said, well, isn't that interesting that you're saying that you don't want to stay here anymore because you find it too tempting? That whole area is a temptation to people who are trying to kick. And so so for instance, Corey Monteith's last day, so he died, they think he died on the 12th. His body was found on the 13th early in the morning. On the 11th, his last Twitter, he changed his Twitter photo, and it was him at a cafe in the downtown east side, and he was also photographed at another place in the downtown east side.
I want to.
A lot of people criticize me, Bill, saying, "Oh, there's no way he'd go down to the downtown east side. He wouldn't need to go down to the downtown east side." Well, he did go down to the downtown east side, and it's just a big temptation for people. And Sweden's moved away from that whole model of having sort of centralized locations where people can do their harm reduction and stuff like that. They've moved to an abstinence-based program, and they have the lowest rate of drug addictions in the world, is my understanding.
You said a few minutes ago that drug overdose deaths had increased in Vancouver.
It has.
Well, according to Dr. Patricia Daly, who happens to be the chief medical health officer at Vancouver Coastal Health. Wait a minute. She said over the last 15 years...
started in 2003, and since then the numbers have gone up.
Dr. Daly said over the last 15 years we have increased the number of people in drug treatment 5 times. Overdose deaths have gone down, particularly in the vicinity of Insite.
Yeah, well, not the if you go to the BC coroners, in fact, there's if you go to the BC coroners websites and you look at the numbers from Insight started in 2003, so start 2002, move up. They've increased in the downtown east side. There's more overdose deaths now, and what's happened is more people are using now.
Back with the final segment, including your calls right after this. Talking with Calgary Herald columnist Licia Corbella, who raised quite a stir over a column about Insite a few weeks ago, linking the death of actor Corey Monteith to Vancouver. And she has since been back in Vancouver. She's toured Insite, and I welcome your calls to her. Peter, good morning.
Bill?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Why do you have airheads on your show?
You can disagree with Licia Corbella, but I don't think you have to resort to name calling.
Get her facts straight before she goes all over your newscast or whatever, and tell her to get her facts straight before she.
What facts? Come on, Peter.
She doesn't have no facts. She's got to back them up. She doesn't have any.
Tell me your experience.
My experience? I've been clean 7 years, and I work with the downtown east side every night. I'm not going to tell you what I do, but tell her to get her facts straight before she comes on the radio.
What fact has she been wrong on?
Well, everything. Insite's they've been doing a great job. They saved a lot of lives. Oh, and one more thing, you can thank the federal government for feeding that frenzy downtown.
In what way?
Well, just the way they operate. Because if they don't, they're either feeding them morphine or methadone or whatever they call it, or heroin. It's nothing but a cash grab for the government to keep it going. That's what it is.
Licia, first of all, do you have anything to say to Peter?
Well, he says for me to get my facts straight. Seriously, I mean that Lancet study that found that overdose deaths had gone down in the downtown east side has been exposed as erroneous. A bunch of PhDs have said that there was a lot of things wrong with that Lancet study, and they've actually put in a complaint to University of British Columbia with basically saying that the standard of practice for that study were erroneous and wrong, and that there was dishonesty in that. And all you need to do is go to the BC Coroner's website and look at the numbers, and it's all broken down, and the numbers have gone up, not down.
If you could write your column over again, now that you've been inside Insite and done more research, would you change anything?
Yeah, sure. I'd have written it. It was. I'll admit that there were some clumsy bits in it for sure, and I'd be a lot more careful. And apparently, unless you cite research, it's not a valid opinion. Everyone else can spout their opinion, but apparently you have to cite research time and time and time again. It wasn't that kind of a column. I wasn't citing research, but in this case, I would cite the research next time.
Well, let me again quote Dr. Patricia Daly. She notes that the Fraser Valley, with no safe injection site and limited harm reduction, has had about 80 overdose deaths versus 60 in Vancouver in the last year that we have a record for, which was 2009.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I don't have those numbers handy, and I'm sorry I don't have those handy.
Okay. Tracy.
Hi. Well, first of all, any journalist that quotes YouTube videos as her source ought to give her head a shake. And I would honestly say her journalistic skills are more suited for the National Enquirer. Thanks, Bill.
See, that's what it's all about, Bill. It's just it's personal slurs, right? It's not a YouTube video. I said it's a documentary, and it's available on YouTube. If you want to see it, you can go to YouTube. It's been downloaded onto YouTube. It's a documentary.
Who did the documentary?
And the person had a hidden camera and went in. So you can believe your own eyes if you want to. If you don't want to believe what you see, then don't.
Licia, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
Licia Corbella, Calgary Herald. News is next.